through.
Live, it's Wednesday night.
I feel like we need some theme music or something.
I'm gonna write out the prayer just for Addison. Hey, we're live.
Hey. Wonder.
Not on YouTube.
That definitely looks better than it did last week.
We talked to Greg. He's home. Actually, he's on his way to where I live right now for a meeting. He sounded really good over the phone. He's a mess. Just say he's a mess.
Remember, we're live.
Greg, listen, you're a mess. You know it as well as everybody else does now. But he's actually going to where I live for a meeting, so he's out and about now. Gail is green.
Why didn't you guys put out the doggy? I was standing there, I got there early, had to wait for the grandparents to open the door for me.
Maybe he was looking over. He was looking over and wiggling at somebody. He was looking at someone.
I was talking to it, I said, oh God, I can't hear it.
Yeah, it's probably what he was.
You gotta say loud.
I forgot my laptop, but I can go down. The only thing is I don't know the church's password, but I can look for my account and just select the number.
Is he still showing there standing there? It's magic.
Yeah, I thought we did 11 last week. Yeah.
Share it.
That's what I thought. Yeah, Mark.
She said today that Rob was talking to her as I left. She's not really good. She's going to call us back. She's going out there tomorrow morning. Bill's out.
What'd you say?
They said they were gonna come. Rachel had to go when I left to come get ready.
What?
They're over here.
Okay.
Randomly started choking in the car. I'm like, that's real great. Let's go in the building coughing.
Empty the coffee pot.
Your pink mask you were wearing last week, or on the weekend for church. They had breast cancer. Where'd you get that at?
It was actually a gift.
I feel you.
Cause I know I found a blue one like that at Friendly Dollar.
Yeah.
Dollar Tree.
Wash tub up there. See up there?
Yeah. You know, in prisons they use trash cans sometimes
We use those as trash cans.
for baptistries. Because where do you baptize in a prison?
Right.
Most prisons just say the sinner's prayer, and then when you're out of prison in 40 years, then you can get baptized. Or you can get sprinkled or poured.
Ask you about that later on.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Sinner's prayer. I think I know what it is.
We'll talk about it. So someone said, hey, we'll just use a trash can, a big one.
That's not tough. Going to prison.
Yeah.
Does he get to go in there?
For Bruce.
No. Yeah, you
Yeah.
I went in Nashville, Tennessee, though. And then they, not too long after that, they wouldn't allow schools to go back in there. They walked back over there. Lincoln Chair was there. They were excited.
He wants a cup of
Howdy,
cookies.
y'all. I'm here tonight is liberation. Sending love your way. Hey, what's with the instrumental? And I'll take a cup of Joe Black.
Okay.
Prayer list and then
Checklist of these questions. John, we're glad to have you here. Instrumental is because of the conference call system that we use. And every week I beg and plead, if you're out there, please join the conference call so this music will stop playing.
That's why. That's why.
It plays this while you're waiting for another person to join in on the call.
If you're still doing it at home, I would thank the first
Yeah.
person that would join me.
Yeah, whoever joins in, we will thank
And we
you.
like have had to listen to this for like 20 minutes before, and it gets stuck in your
Yeah,
head.
and I try to sign into it now a little bit later than what we would at the house. So if I'm torturing you, it's because I've been tortured. Just kidding.
Catherine, I like the coconut.
Was there any other questions that I that we no okay.
It smells like coconut to me. It doesn't taste like coconut. Can you cheer that out? It smells like suntan lotion. Yeah.
No, I don't deny it.
I'm glad you guys liked it. It was he got me chocolate caramel. Sugar-free chocolate caramel.
Yum.
Yeah, that's, I like coffee and I like chocolate, but I do not like them mixed.
Oh,
I
I
can't
do.
stand coffee, chocolate free chocolate. I don't know, I just taste that chocolate It doesn't get my coffee to the consistency that
Turned it down a little bit.
too much. And it tastes nasty.
I think the music stopped.
Hey, hello?
So we either got disconnected or somebody joined us. Hello?
Somebody joined you.
Yay! Thank you for rescuing us all from that crazy music. No, I am thankful for that. It's free. It's free conference call, I think .com or something like that. So it's really cool. Of course, they send me multiple emails. How much can you pay us? You know, for you saved this many minutes and all this. And hey, we're a nonprofit here, people. So thankful for them.
John says he's happy to be here with us all.
Yeah, we're happy to have you joining us via YouTube. We'd be happier if you were here with us in person, but under the circumstances, we understand.
Well, I have to be here because my son and daughter-in-law are coming to visit me, and I have to cook.
Well, I think Chuck's plans changed. He's going to let me fly along instead of him. He knows how much I can't handle this cold weather. Just kidding.
I'm bringing the pink suitcase, come on.
There was no comment.
No, I'm thinking, man, I could just bring a tent and just sleep out on the beach somewhere.
Yeah, there's a lot of homeless out there. That sleep in tents and stuff.
I have a tent. I would not be homeless.
Fit right in. Come on down to Key West to be homeless.
Man, I think we're going to start class early. It's definitely warmer.
Western State motto.
What, it's warmer? Okay, I
Come down to Key
know.
West to be homeless.
That's funny. What's the current temperature down there where you're at?
82.
82. So we have friends that just moved to Jacksonville, just south of Jacksonville, and they said, I don't know, this was a few days ago, and it was like mid-50s. They had tornado watches and all that. I think it was right around the Super Bowl time. Anyway, they just moved there, and then I just found out we had another friend from Minnesota moved down there, and he said it was like 70-something wherever he was at. Like, oh, man. All these people from up north are
I can't even,
going down.
can't even brag about it on Facebook either.
Boo-hoo.
Until I get there. My coworkers don't know I'm going.
Are you sneaking away on your COVID?
I'm bringing my with me, so.
You got to speak loud.
Hi, Sean.
From work.
Oh, hey, Sean, glad to have you here.
Thankful to be able to listen along.
Hope you don't get in trouble for watching us at work. That's where you just flip your phone over or something. Pay no attention to that guy talking.
And then we
Anyway,
all start laughing.
if there's anybody from Ohio joining us, we'll try to behave. No promises. All right, table number 1. I know what 2/3 of you are happy for. So maybe we should just
My mother-in-law is at home, and she's doing okay. Yeah.
getting some rest,
Yes,
much needed.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So that's good. Yeah. Should we just skip the other 2 because we know, or do you guys want to?
Rub it in a little bit more.
Let's pass the rest of these people.
Well, I talked to Greg before we left, and he is home from the hospital and on his way to Royal Oak for a Panama missions meeting. So I don't think he had COVID. He didn't elaborate too much, but he is able to go out and be about.
Well, that's
He
good.
He's
sounded
driving
really
himself.
good. He
That's-
sounded really good.
That's great news.
He's able
Yeah.
to, should he?
Well, he said he was pushing himself, but
Wow.
He's pushing himself for the Lord, so we'll allow it.
At least he's well enough to be able to push himself to that.
Yeah.
Like, we did stop.
So I'm friends with Steve Waller. I don't know if anybody else. I know Dad's friends with him. Did you see that he has COVID-19 and he's in bad shape? Like he said, he cannot stand for more than 15 minutes at a time, and he can't talk. So anyway, I mean, some people, it hits really
Yeah.
hard, and others.
He was telling about that last
It
month.
was a few nights ago. He said, but he's had it since mid-December, mid to late December. So anyway, all right.
My girlfriend from before Thanksgiving, she's in therapy and trying to walk with the walker. She still can't walk on her own.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it's like once you can get COVID, and that's bad enough, but it's the after effects, and what it affects your, nervous system and all that other kind of stuff after.
I was reading an article last night about it. I guess there's 2 different types of it. One can settle in your throat and your nose, and the other gets down into your lungs, and then one can get down there easier than the other, and depends on where it targets the body and all that. Sometimes I just see the article headline and I'll read it a little bit, and then I'm like, oh, this article's too long. And then I'll go to another article. But anyway, that was kind of the gist of it. And a lot of science and doctor terms and all that. Anyway.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Especially after the first paragraph or 2.
That's all you need.
I just know some people get it worse than others, and yeah. Anyway. All right. I know you guys are thankful and happy for other things. Maybe we can't say too much on air. Anyway, I'm just not going to say any more. Middle table.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm thankful. Today I went to my diabetes doctor. She's upped my insulin at nighttime to 50 and my Novolog long lasting and the Novolog to 16. But my A1C last time I went to her 3 months ago or 6 months ago, it was 11.7. It comes down to 7.7, and I was glad, and she's so glad it came down. I hope I can keep it down to that level for my sugar.
That's good.
She says, how did you feel when it was up high? I said, I felt good. She said, though, stay away from chocolate-covered donuts and stay away from, not brownies, cupcakes. Hostess cupcakes.
I know,
Watch
we-
what I eat.
A week or two ago, you were kind of dealing with some higher sugar levels, weren't you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's why she upped the insulin,
Yeah.
but I'm so glad about the A1C. That was my happy point for
Yeah.
today.
Well, good. That's great. Anybody else?
Yeah, we're really grateful that my dad, he had some test results that he got back, and he has a hernia, but that is far better than some of the concerns that we were facing. So he's got to go do some more testing before he can possibly have an operation for it or whatever they're going to do. But we're just thankful that it wasn't something a little bit worse.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. All right. Anybody else on the middle table?
Happy to be here.
Happy to be here.
Are you still upset with the groundhog?
Is that cheating? Happy to be
It's kind of
here.
like, you know, Chloe's friends and
See, everybody, and Chloe's next, so we got Chloe covered. No, Chloe, you got anything extra? Yeah? Okay, she's embarrassed now. You don't know? Okay, anybody else over on table number 3?
The ability to walk Frankie.
The ability to walk Frankie. Okay. Or does he walk you?
That's true.
But that collar makes it
That collar helps.
so
Yeah,
much
yeah.
easier.
All right.
She's thankful for music.
For music?
I'm thankful for
Yeah.
that too, so
I'm thankful
Yeah.
for
that's a
music as
shared.
well.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
Sean
It can
says
lighten
too,
the mood.
he has headphones at work.
Oh, you have headphones over. Okay, well,
He
that's,
said in the past, when his station it's slower, his bosses are okay with them being on their phone and reading and all that stuff.
oh, that's cool. Yeah, very cool. My thankfulness is that I'm thankful that I'm not like that attorney. Have you guys seen that? Okay, so don't do it now because we're in class. But afterwards, Chuck, did you see it? The attorney,
See, I heard about it.
oh, he had the filter on where he was a cat at the Zoom. I have never laughed so hard. I laughed tears. I'm not kidding. Last night, and I was laughing tears this afternoon again. So I was just like, man, technology's passed that guy up. He just didn't know what he was doing. And then the thing that cracked me up was his eyes. He's like looking, and it's a cat. They're shifty eyes, and it's just like. And then when he says, like he has to clarify, he says, "I'm not a cat," and it's just, oh, that poor guy. He's talking to a judge.
And the other lawyer's got to put on his glasses, like, I don't even believe what's happening.
Yeah. So when he says I'm not a cat, if you watch real close, the other lawyer, he was looking down like he didn't want to look at the screen because he's gonna laugh. And then the guy says I'm not a cat, and he looks up and he just chuckles, and I would have been turning off my screen and the microphone, and I just,
Yeah.
man, that was hilarious. I wish I could share it right now, but I'd be laughing too hard. Yeah, Jody.
I do want to add that it is definitely a blessing that we are not hovered over like in Canada. I mean, we can come together and have a meeting and stuff, and you know, there's some serious persecution going on in Canada for anybody getting together and worshiping. And
Canada
There's
or
some even here in the States, like California.
California, I was gonna say
Some
California,
churches that
yeah.
They actually had arrests
yeah.
and fines.
Canada's the same, and they're like,
Yeah.
they gotta
Yeah.
go underground,
Yeah.
so we don't have to worship underground. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we are
I mean,
very blessed.
what a huge blessing that we just take for granted.
But we should keep praying
But that doesn't
for
help us.
because it
Yeah.
could happen. And there's Stefan Maillet has been shut down from Facebook. He's joined Trump, I guess, in the being
Yeah.
blackballed from Facebook. And anyway, they've had police called on them during worship service, and the police have shown up. And anyway, and he's warning people out there. He's like, it's going to happen in America if we're not careful. So we should be prayerful on that. Not, pray about it, and maybe have some contingency plans if things ever like that do happen. What would we do? Because it could happen. So anyway, persecution certainly happened. It happened in the first century, didn't it? And we see that constantly, over and over again in the book of Acts. Last week we were in chapter 11, It was really a retelling of some of the events that took place in chapter 10. The kingdom included the Gentiles. Peter was talking about the first Gentile convert. I mean, he had his hand in that. Who was the first Gentile convert? Anybody remember what his name is? All right, Cornelius. Cornelius was a Roman soldier. He was a leader, wasn't he? He was a good guy. He was very religious, had a good reputation amongst the Jews, giving. Obviously, he was a good leader. He had an open and honest heart, willing to listen to Peter. And we also saw that disciples were first called Christians in what city? That comes at the end of the chapter. All right.
Antioch.
That's right, in the city of Antioch. So that brings us up to chapter 12 tonight. And chapter 12 is the letter L in the alphabet. And can anybody tell me what the L might be for? Liberated again from prison. Yeah, it's all right. Liberated again from prison. And so this particular chapter, before we jump into it, it reminded me of a few things. First of all, it reminds me that bad things happen to good people. And it reminds me that bad things happen to good people, and by that I mean Christians. Right? We don't live in a perfect world, and bad things do happen. We see that happening in this particular chapter. We also see the power and the importance of prayer and how important it was to them in the church. And then I'm also reminded in this chapter that we need to let God be the judge over bad things. Let him deal with it. Let him repay evil for evil. And we'll see more of that when we get later on into chapter 12. So I think I've divided this up into 4 parts. Let's jump into the first section here and read Acts chapter 12, verses 1 through 4, as we see some more violence that comes upon the church. Again, Acts 12, verses 1 through 4. Luke says, "Now about that time Herod the king stretched out his hand to harass some from the church. Then he killed James the brother of John with the sword, and because he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to seize Peter also. Now it was during the days of unleavened bread. So when he had arrested him, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 squads of soldiers to keep him, intending to bring him before the people after Passover." So as we talk about this violence upon the church, who stretched out his hand to harass or persecute the church? Herod. Okay, so now I want to talk about some history here for just a minute. So you're not going to find this answer in the Bible, but when we think about Herod, how many Herods are mentioned in the New Testament? Many. Okay. How about a number? Okay, so no number.
5.
5? That's close.
6, 4,
3.
7.
I'm gonna. Wow. Okay, so what did you say? She says 8. Over here, I heard 4,
I'll go with 6.
6. You said many.
I did.
Many numbers. Pick one.
7.
7. Okay, well, if you pick the number 6, you would be right. And this is where I would give you a gold star. Why do I keep forgetting those? I don't know. I need to send a reminder to me. Anyway, 6 of them. Let's talk about those 6 for just a minute. Because if you're just reading through, you see Herod, you might think, well, is it the same one they read about in the gospel accounts? Well, it's not. He's a different one here in the book of Acts. So the first Herod, his name was Herod the Great. He would be the one who was the Herod or the king when Jesus was born. Then you have Herod, who is known as Archelaus. And he was in charge after his dad died. And he was the one that was, a lot of people feared him. And that's why Joseph, being Jesus' dad, didn't go to return back to the Judea area. And they ended up going to Nazareth because of him, Herod Archelaus. So you can read about that in Matthew chapter 2, verse 22. Then there's a Herod by the name of Antipas. Sometimes he's called Herod the Tetrarch because he ruled over a fourth of the kingdom. And he was the Herod that killed John the Baptizer. And he reigned during Jesus' ministry. Then you have Herod Philip, who also was a tetrarch. He reigned over fourth, and he reigned over the north and east area of Galilee during the time of his brother Antipas, Luke chapter 3, verse 1. And then you have here in Acts chapter 12, Herod Agrippa the First. And so they just call him Herod. That's just kind of his title, but this is Herod Agrippa the First. And then later on in the book of Acts, we read about another Herod. So you have Herod Agrippa the First. Can you guess what the next one is? All right, very good. Herod Agrippa the Second, and he was at the trial of Paul in Caesarea, Acts chapter 25. And he was the last king or Herod in Judea. And then Rome returned back to having governors over the land. Say that again?
Did you say it's the trial of Paul?
Paul, yeah, in Caesarea, Acts chapter 25. So the Herods were Roman appointed kings over Judea, and while the New Testament mentions 6, the Herodian dynasty actually started sooner than them here in the Bible. It actually started with a guy by the name of Antipater the First, and he was not a Jew, actually. He was a descendant of, or not a descendant, but he was a relative of the Jews. He was an Idumean. Does anybody know what an Idumean is? Okay, Idumeans were natives of Edom. And does anybody know anything about the Edomites?
They were proud.
Oh, they were proud. So there was an entire book in the Old Testament dedicated to the Edomites, the book of Obadiah. They were relatives of Esau. They were Esau's descendants. You remember Jacob? From him became Israel, and from Esau became the Edomites. There was a long-lasting conflict between the Israelites and the Edomites. Anyway, according to Roman historian Josephus, Antipater I converted to Judaism during a time of forced conversions. He was forced to become a Jew about 100 years before Jesus was born. And forced conversion means he was taken as an adult male and was circumcised. So he was forced to do that. It was not of his will. But anyway, the Herodian dynasty rose from him. So again, that all kind of transpired and became about during that 400 years of silence. Like, have you ever read in the Old Testament, right? You read through there, you get to the end, and then you jump to Matthew and the gospel accounts, and then you read about the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the Old Testament doesn't ever talk about them. Well, they kind of rose up during that time of silence as well. Anyway, there's some history for you. There'll be a quiz on that next week. Haha. That's why some, not going to say names, but there will be some not here. Anyway, just kidding.
I'll be here in voice.
In voice. All right, so Herod Agrippa the First was all about being popular, wasn't he? That's what politicians, they like to be popular, don't they? So because he was about being popular with the Jews liked him, he did something else. What did he do? Oh, wait, I forgot to say this first. First of all, Herod Agrippa the First did something. He killed somebody. Who did he kill?
James, the brother of John.
All right, that's right. James, the brother of John, and this was the Apostle James. And so here we find in Acts chapter 12, about 44 years after the church was established, again, about 14 years, you have the first martyred apostle. And that might make a good pop quiz question. Anyway, this made Herod popular with the Jews, and he wanted to remain popular. So what else did he do to try to be popular, to continue his popularity with the Jews?
Arrested Peter.
Put Peter in jail.
That's right. He seized Peter, arrested Peter, and threw him in jail. Now, what time period was this?
Around Pentecost,
Okay.
or during the days of unleavened bread.
Okay. Very good. I'm having some multiple answers thrown out there at me. All right. Days of unleavened bread is what the text literally says here, depending on which translation you use. If you use the King James Version, you might see the word Easter actually used here. Now, this is not a time and a place for me to argue whether this term should be in the Bible or not. Both sides, if you think it shouldn't be there, you're going to find reasons why it shouldn't be there. And if you think that it should be there, you're going to find reasons why it should be there. I'm not going to argue over it. I'll let you decide that on your own, but I will give you this for food for thought. If you look up that particular word for Easter, as it's used in the King James Version, in the original language, according to Strong's Enhanced Dictionary, it says it's an Aramaic word in origin. It's Pascha, or however it's pronounced, Pascha, meaning the Passover, the meal, the day, the festival, or the special sacrifices connected with it. And this particular word is found 29 times in 27 verses in the King James Version, and it's always translated Passover, except for here in Acts chapter 12, verse 4. So, just so that you're aware of it. Again, not anything worth arguing over. Because of their Jewish holiday, because of their Jewish holy day, it was a Jewish holy day, Peter was put into prison and he was going to be tried after the Passover. And so while he sat there in prison, how many soldiers guarded him?
16.
Why, yeah, you jumped ahead of my notes. All right, so...
That's what the International English.
International English. Okay, so they kind of simplified it there for us. New King James Version says how many squads?
4.
All right, 4 squads. The King James Version says 4. I can't even pronounce that word. Catherine can look at it. It's spelled Quaternions. Quaternions, okay. That's kind of we don't use that word very much today. Anyway, this would be a group of 4 soldiers that rotated 4 night watches, and so that would be a total of 16 soldiers in total, and they were responsible for guarding him. Why do you think they would have had 16 soldiers overall guarding Peter?
Because they knew who he was, what he could do, and so they wanted to make sure that he wouldn't break out.
Okay. Had he ever escaped before?
Yes.
Yes, he had. So Herod didn't want to be embarrassed, did he? So he wanted to have plenty of soldiers guarding him. Were there any of them chained to Peter?
Yes.
So 2 were chained to him, and there were 2 posted at the door to guard and to make sure that he did not escape again. But when we come to verses 5 through 19, can anybody guess what happens? If you're looking at the screen. Jailbreak, yeah. Peter escapes again from prison, but it was a very miraculous escape. And so here's some details about this. Starting in verse number 19, or verse number 5, going through verse 19. Luke tells us that Peter was therefore kept in prison, but constant prayer was offered to God for him by the church. And when Herod was about to bring him out that night, Peter was sleeping, bound with 2 chains between 2 soldiers, and the guards before the door were keeping the prison. Now behold, an angel of the Lord stood by him, and a light shone in the prison, and he struck Peter on the side and raised him up, saying, "Arise quickly," and his chains fell off his hands. Then the angel said to him, "Gird yourself and tie on your sandals." And so he did. And he said to him, "Put on your garment and follow me." So he went out and followed him, and did not know that when he was done, that what was done by the angel was real, but thought he was seeing a vision. When they were past the first and second guard posts, they came to the iron gate that leads to the city, which opened to them of its own accord, and they went out and went down one street, and immediately the angel departed from him. And when Peter had come to himself, he said, "Now I know for certain that the Lord has sent his angel and has delivered me from the hand of Herod and from all the expectation of the Jewish people." So when he had considered this, he came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark, where many were gathered together praying. And as Peter knocked at the door of the gate, a girl named Rhoda came to answer. And when she recognized Peter's voice, because of her gladness, she did not open the gate, but ran in and announced that Peter stood before the gate. But they said to her, "You are beside yourself." Yet she kept insisting that it was so. So they said, "It was his angel." Now Peter continued knocking, and when they opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. But motioning to them with his hand to keep silent, he declared to them how the Lord had brought him out of the prison. And he said, "Go tell these things to James and to the brethren." And he departed and went to another place. Then as soon as it was day, there was no small stir among the soldiers about what had become of Peter. But when Herod had searched for him and not found him, he examined the guards and commanded them that they should be put to death. And he went down from Judea to Caesarea and stayed there. All right, so let's pause there in verse number 19. While Peter was in prison, what did the church do? Verse 5. All right, they prayed for him. Let's see, if we look back there, it says they were constant, right? It was a constant prayer. The NU manuscripts and the English Standard Version has it rendered this way as well. It was an earnest prayer. You think about earnest, right? It's like, well, what do you guys think earnest would mean? If
Fervent.
Okay. Fervent.
Very
What's that?
dedicated prayer. Yeah.
Passion.
Dedicated.
All right.
Serious prayer.
All right. All right. Very good. So they were in that constant, earnest prayer for Peter. Who showed up and freed Peter? Well, all right. That's right. An angel of the Lord showed up. So Luke tells us, this is just Brian kind of paraphrasing this a light shined into the prison. Well, it was at night. Probably not many windows, if any windows at all. And so this light shined in there. He had to give Peter a little bit of a thumping, didn't he, to wake him up? I thought that was kind of interesting. Peter was sleeping pretty good. I think,
How well was he sleeping? Tied to two dudes on the same prison.
but he was sleeping pretty well that he needed a wake-up nudge.
Yeah, I remember somebody here preaching about that, about how he proves how faithful he was, that he fell asleep while in prison. And back then, prisons are not what they're like today.
No, right.
Today, prisoners are treated better than most people.
And he was faithful and at peace with things.
Yes.
Yeah, to be able to do that. Yeah. And then the chains miraculously just fell off of his hands. The angel gives him some instructions. That's kind of interesting, right? Tie your shoes, put on your clothes, your garment. Peter followed the angel, not knowing if what he was seeing was real or a vision. We can imagine that was pretty confusing. I mean, Peter was already the one that seen that vision of the sheet. So he's probably really, really confused. They make it past, not only the guards that were next to him, they must have been in a really sound sleep too. Then the guards stationed at the door, and then they make it past the guards that were posted in the various stations. They came to the iron gate that led to the city. What did the gate do? It opened. Did anybody force it open? Was there anybody there waiting for him?
It says it opened on its own accord.
Opened on its own accord. How cool is that, right? Then they went down one street. We don't know what street it was. They went down a street, and then the angel's like, bye. And then he left. And then Peter's just kind of standing there, and then he came to himself. I thought that was a pretty interesting phrase as well. After the angel left, he came to himself. He understood that it was God's will to deliver him from Herod and the Jews. So it wasn't just Herod, but it was the Jewish people that were pleased with Peter being arrested. And who knows what would have happened to Peter. Although the Jews didn't have the legal right to kill anybody, although did they ever stop them in the past? Jesus, Stephen. Anyway, so who knows what would have happened to Peter. But where does Peter end up going? Verse 12.
Mary's house.
All right, Mary's house, and she was the mother of who? All right, John who?
Surname was Mark.
All right, John surnamed Mark, right? Anyway, John Mark. We're going to see shortly here that John Mark joins Saul and Barnabas, or I should say Barnabas, because in Saul, that's kind of the order that things are going now. He's also the same one that wrote the gospel account of Mark. Anyway, Luke says that's where they were at. They were at Mary's house praying. Peter knocks at the door of the gate, and who answered? Rhoda. All right. And then what did Rhoda do when she heard Peter's voice?
She was so happy she ran.
Oh, well. Just left him there.
Yeah,
Well, hi.
yeah, that's kind of a. Wonder if anybody ever picked on her. Like, right? We'll read about Eutychus later and what he did. Wonder if anybody. Oh, you're the lady that you're the young lady that left Peter at the door. Anyway, yeah. So she was excited. She ran back. Was everybody else excited when they heard Peter was at the gate at the door? Verse 15.
Because you didn't let him in.
They didn't. They didn't believe her. And in fact, what do they think she was?
Crazy.
Thought she was crazy. Yeah, they said, you're beside yourself. You look at that phrase, that just means you are crazy. She kept insisting, no, it's so. He's out there. What did they conclude? All right, it was his angel. All right, so yeah, that phrase, you're beside yourself, means maniac or you're insane. You're insane mad, not angry mad. Or you're like crazy mad. One who speaks something that seems to not be in his right mind. Again, that's Enhanced Strong's Dictionary. What did they mean when they said that it was his angel standing out there?
That he was probably killed too.
Okay. Now, there's various views on what this could mean. Some commentators say that the early Jewish Christians believed in guardian angels, and that would go back to Judaism, and so that they said that they brought that belief in with them. Others say that they believe that it was his disembodied spirit or his ghost. Again, probably not worth anything arguing over, but whatever it was, they didn't really believe it was Peter. I think it's interesting, however, they were praying for Peter, weren't they? They were praying for his safety. I'm sure there were some people praying for him to be freed, and yet when he was, they didn't believe it.
And then they were astonished.
Yeah. So I just think all that's pretty interesting. I'm just going to interject here. Chapter 12 is really intriguing to me. There's a lot of intriguing things going on in this chapter. I think we could correlate that to maybe sometimes in our prayer life as well. What did Peter keep on doing while he's out there? Verse 16.
Knocking. He was persistent.
Hello. I was just going to do that. He coined the phrase, hello.
All that time we thought it was Jerry.
Yeah.
Peter.
Oh, someday we'll all be in heaven. And hey, Peter, remember that time you were there? Was he the one that originated knock-knock jokes? I don't know. Anyway, they finally opened the door. They were astonished, and there had to have been some loud commotion going on in the house at this point, because Peter was the inventor of sign language. He does some sort of motion with his hand, probably something like this. What does that mean?
Stop.
Or does it mean?
It means no or stop.
Shut up. Yep, stop it. So it says, right, he used his hand and he motioned them to be quiet. Now, why would he want them to be quiet?
Because he wanted the guards to figure out what had happened.
He's a man on the run.
They don't know.
And he'd already been making commotion outside. He's a man on the run from the law. And they're out there yelling and having a party. And he also had a lot to tell them, all right? So he explains to them how he made it out of prison, verse 17. He tells them to go tell somebody what had happened to him. Who did he?
James and the brethren.
All right, so apparently not every Christian was at Mary's house praying that night. Because I can't imagine, because this is what I was thinking. Well, maybe they were in another room, but I don't think that's the case. I cannot imagine somebody like Peter showing up in a house and just somebody, hey, the game's on. Peter's here, whatever. I'm not going to come in. No, I can imagine everybody was crowding around. So I think James and the brethren were someplace else. But again, that's Brian's speculation.
Well, I mean, it also could have been because the door, like maybe it was like a courtyard. Like
Could have been, maybe they
where
could have
he
been in
showed up.
another place
Yeah,
in the,
and then there
on
was
the
a
property area.
courtyard, yeah, and then
Yeah.
everybody was in
Yeah.
the building and she didn't open the door to the courtyard or something like that.
Oh, I can't wait till we can all get to heaven and ask some more questions about this. But by that time, I know there's somebody out there going, by that time, none of this is going to matter. So we won't remember any of this.
So, which James would this be?
This would be the brother of, the half brother of Jesus. Yeah.
I was gonna say, did he not know that he was killed before? I'm sure that he was with him.
Yeah. All right. So what happened well, real quick though, Peter then leaves and goes to another place, right? Where was the other place?
Doesn't say.
It doesn't say. All right, very good. I wanted to see if anybody had any, pull out some random Jericho. No, I don't know. It doesn't say, but he fled. Did you say over yonder?
Yep.
Yeah, that's scriptural. That's What happened in the morning at daybreak? Verse 18.
Those soldiers were freaking out.
All right, so I like the way the Bible words it, right? There was no small stir among the soldiers about what had become of Peter. So if it wasn't a small stir, can you tell me what kind of stir it was? It was a big stir. I think of these stir sticks over there, right? That's a little stir, and compared to a big, like a frother thing. Anyway, it was a big commotion. I'm sure there was a lot of confusion, stress,
And they knew
concern.
what was about to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And so Herod had Peter searched for, and did they find him? Verses 18 and 19. Nope. It even went so far where Herod has a special investigation. He examined the guards. It's the idea that he held a forensic type of investigation. He brought him in like an interrogation type of thing. If you've ever watched some of those FBI, CIA type of shows, maybe he used waterboarding. Who knows what he did? But he was trying to get the answers from these guards. And the answer is they didn't know.
Romans are very brutal, so they could have.
Put him on the rack and stretched the guy. Who knows? But the answer was they didn't know. They lost him because they were in La La Land, not California. They were sleeping, sound asleep. Addison's got her hand partially up, I think.
John says, "Oh no, we're dead." The soldiers. I think that they knew that they were.
That's right, John. They knew they were in trouble. That was the part of the job, was you were responsible as a soldier for your prisoner. And so that's why it was not a small stir. It was a big stir.
I don't know, but if I was the soldier and they were like, hey, we're going to put you in charge of this prisoner over there, I'd be automatically freaking out at the point where they were putting me in charge of the prisoners. Can't I have any other job? Because I would know that this one might get me killed.
Right.
That's true, and that would make sense. But check this out. You're a Roman soldier, right? And you don't believe in Christianity, and these were young guys, right? These were they were probably late teenagers, maybe 18, 19-year-olds, maybe early 20-year-olds, and you want to rise up in the ranks, and you're like, I get to guard Peter, right? So those guys failed before. I'm gonna be the one who's gonna make sure he doesn't get away this time. So I'm sure there was some pride there. They were looking after their careers. This would certainly be a way that they could rise in the ranks. And
Probably thought being chained to him for sure. He's not gonna get out of this.
until somebody gave him a big dose of melatonin or something to help him sleep very, very well. What was the sentence for the guards?
Death.
All right, they died. So what did he do after this? What does the Bible say? Verse 19.
He went on down to a party in Caesarea.
All right, he went down.
Went about his business.
All right, so who is the he there? See, original. So I was writing questions, and I said Peter. And I was, wait a minute, no, this wasn't talking about Peter. Actually, this was talking about Herod. And so Luke, thanks, Luke. Yeah, we'll have to talk to you one day about all your uses of pronouns here. But yeah, he was referring to Herod. He left Judea. He went to Caesarea. Any ideas why he would have left?
Embarrassment?
He was embarrassed. Right? Again, he was popular with the Jews. The Jews the Jews were happy that James was killed, and now he lost Peter and embarrassment. So in my notes, I was just trying to look at what I said here in my notes and make sense of it. Logic would tell us that the Jews would have been very upset, right? That Herod and the soldiers lost Peter because of that miraculous escape. All right, so now let's move into verses 20 through 24, where we find Herod dying a most painful death. Verse 20 says, Now Herod had been very angry with the people of Tyre and Sidon, but they came to him with one accord, and having made Blastus, the king's personal aide, their friend, they asked for peace because their country was supplied with food by the king's country. So, on a said day, Herod, arrayed in royal apparel, sat on his throne and gave an oration to them. And the people kept shouting, The voice of a God and not of a man. Then immediately an angel of the Lord struck him because he did not give glory to God, and he was eaten by worms and died. But the word of God grew and multiplied. All right, so who was Herod very angry with? Verse 20. Okay, he was very angry with them. We don't know why he was angry with them, but the idea there is that he was on the verge of going to war with them. Something made him very angry. And so in his mind, he was plotting some sort of war with them. The people of Tyre and Sidon didn't want a war. And who did they make friends with? Blastus. And what was Blastus's job? Okay, his personal aide. Some translations call him the Chamberlain? The Chamberlain, yes. It just meant he was in charge of the bedchamber. He was a very close friend of Herod. Very close aide to him. He'd be the one there helping Herod get up in the morning, helping him go to sleep at night, helping Herod get dressed in all of his clothes, and all that. Why did the people of Tyre and Sidon not want a war?
Because their country was supplied with food by the king's country.
So it makes sense. You don't really want a war with the...
By the hand of Egypt.
That is exactly right. Don't bite the hand that feeds you, and do whatever you can, right, to prevent this from coming. And that's what they were doing. And apparently things worked out. I'm sure gifts were exchanged or maybe given. By gifts, I mean bribes. Whatever they could to appease Herod. And then there was a chosen day. They chose a day to pay honor to Herod. Historian, again, Josephus. Josephus was a Jewish man who wrote the history of the Jews to Rome. And so historian Josephus said that it was on the second day of the sports games that were going on there in the area of Tyre and Sidon that they appointed this day for Herod to come. And Luke says that Herod was clothed in what?
Royal apparel.
Royal apparel. And where did he sit? Okay, he sat on his throne. And what did he give them? great oration, this speech, like a good politician can, right? And people were just in love with him again, or they were just feeding into his pride. And it must have been a great speech, because why did the people keep shouting? Verse 22.
This is the voice of a God, not man.
Yeah, the voice of a God and not of a man. Apparently, Herod didn't stop the people. And what immediately happened to Herod because he didn't give God the glory? Verse 23. So he was so he was struck by an angel of the Lord. So I think it's kind of interesting that we see 2 times there were people touched by an angel. TV show, touched by an angel, right? One was in a good way, another was in a very bad way, and he was eaten by worms, and then what? He gave up the ghost. He breathed his last. In other words, he died. One ancient manuscript adds the phrase that he was eaten by worms while he was alive. So this is eaten by worms is a medical term. Again, Luke was a physician, and this is the only time that you see it used in the New Testament. At least I'm pretty sure that's the case. And Herod didn't die immediately.
No, Josephus' account says that it took
Yes.
5 days.
5 days for him to be eaten by these worms. Josephus also pointed out, he didn't really talk about the worms, he just talked about how the agonizing pain that he had in his stomach. Yep. The Geneva Study Bible said that Josephus records that the king did not repress the flatterers' tongues, and therefore at his death he complained and cried out about their empty praise. And so here's a very powerful lesson that we could take away from this, is that God resists the proud. And this is kind of maybe a discussion question or thought question, but do you think that there's different levels of pride? I say that because sometimes you do a job and you say, I take pride in my work, or if your kids do something good and you say, well, I'm proud of my kid. Personally, I don't think that's bad pride. But then there's, what kind of pride is bad pride? Better than everyone else?
Arrogant pride.
Arrogant pride. All right. And then even with that bad pride, do you think that there could be maybe different levels of that bad pride?
Yeah.
Because there's pride where like people don't ever have repentance of it, versus some people get that arrogant pride, but they can go, oh, I was wrong. So you can be so prideful that you don't even recognize that you're prideful.
Sure.
Well,
Right.
and you think, so somebody else says, you did a really good job, it's okay to go, thank you, and to take that and be proud of what you did. But where he's like, yeah, keep praising me as a God, there's clearly different levels.
So is there a fine line between confidence and pride?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything wrong with having confidence? Self-confidence? No. But can it go over the line? It can. And where's that magical line? I don't know. I think it would all depend on each individual person.
I think it has a lot to do with if our hearts stay focused on God, we're never going to cross that line, because we're going to know that even though we may have worked towards an accomplishment, every accomplishment that we ever achieve comes from the Lord.
So where is God in the whole picture?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what happened to the word of God here?
It grew and multiplied.
It grew and multiplied. So here's another reference to church growth, but here it's referencing to the word growing. And then we come up to verse number 25. I'm not really sure why this is in Luke 12. It seems to me, but who am I? It would fit better with chapter 13. But since it's here, we're going to address it anyway. It's the return of Barnabas and Saul. Verse 25 says, "And Barnabas and Saul returned from Jerusalem when they had fulfilled their ministry, and they also took with them John, whose surname was Mark." So this verse is a reference to Barnabas and Saul returning from a trip to Judea. Remember that they went down to Judea in Acts chapter 11 with something. Do you remember what they took with them down there? Verses 29 and 30. They had a gift with them.
And relief to the brethren dwelling in Judea.
Okay, so they'd had that special contribution up there. They were going to return to Jerusalem, give it to the elders because something was going to be happening. And, all right, there was going to be a great famine, and they were preparing for it. So Barnabas and Saul were down there, and they were coming back to Antioch. And who do they bring with them?
Mark.
All right, Mark, John Mark. And he's going to be going with Barnabas and Saul on their first missionary journey. Brother Kaufman says in his commentary, with the conclusion of this chapter, Luke had set the stage for the worldwide program of evangelism among the Gentiles, and he would at once move to the narrative of Paul's first missionary journey. And so we clearly see here at the end of this chapter that there's a shift in thought. The first 12 chapters are primarily about Peter and the Jews and the work around Jerusalem and Judea. And now once you get to chapter 13 on in the book of Acts, it's focusing primarily on the work of Paul/Saul. And we'll talk about his name change when we get to that section. All right. I've been talking a lot. Do you guys have any questions or comments, or is there anything that jumped out at you? Any lessons? Anything strange or unusual? There's lots of worms. Did I mention that some people call those like maggots type of worms? Yeah. Yes, Jody.
I was just going to point out that back when, the jailbreak, it wasn't like a rushed thing. It was you had time to put on sandals, put on your cloak. It wasn't, okay, they're down for 30 seconds. You got to grab your stuff and you got to run. It was, God was in control. So I mean,
Good
the
point.
angel saying, take your time, strap on your sandals. You don't have to carry them with you. We got plenty of time. So.
And I think that by doing that, he had him ready because he was going to be journeying past the house where he ended up. So.
Take your stuff with you because you're going to be.
You're not coming back.
Yeah. Very good. That's a great lesson, right? God is in control, even in a bad situation like that. Is that a good lesson for all of us today? Yep. You think sometimes we forget that? Yeah. All right. Anything else besides the worms?
John just pointed out that verse 25 seeming random there is men created divisions.
Absolutely. We've talked about that before. I don't remember the year, but it was like 800 or something like that some guy put in the chapter divisions, and then a couple hundred years later, I'm sure I'm way off on that. I think it was like 1200 or something like that. And then a couple hundred years later, some guy decided, hey, I'm going to put in verses there. So, and then sometimes you're like, wow, I don't understand that. But since we're going chapter by chapter, and because it's there, we'll just kind of, but I will probably reference verse 25 again next week because that's kind of the larger context of what was going on there in Luke 13. But that's a great reminder for us, John. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? All right. I think that's it.
John also says that this is the same John Mark that Paul claimed not useful.
And we'll see that. We'll jumping a little bit ahead, but that's true. I'm going to jump further ahead. He liked John Mark later on in life. So anyway, we're kind of hopscotching each other. But yeah, there was some sort of conflict. So anyway, we'll talk more about that. I think when you think about all that I think there was some growth there on Paul's part. I think there was some growth on John Mark's part. And which is an important lesson that people sometimes have to grow in their who they are, their demeanor, and their spiritual walk as well. Even these inspired men of God had to do the same thing. So, all right, very good. Glad to have everybody here tonight. We're going to close with the word of prayer, and as I had said last week, I hope he's ready for this. It's my dad. So give me a minute. I'm going to try to help him out for those who are viewing online. I'm going to turn the microphone around, but be loud. Be loud. Be loud.
Chin up.
Let's pray. Father in heaven, we're so thankful for another great lesson tonight. A lesson that is very important to all of us, Father. That it was very interesting in listening and commenting about it. Father, go with us now and go with all those sick of our number who are not able to be with us tonight. They will continue to get well. We're so thankful, Father, that we can call on you and you'll help us when nothing else can. Go with us now, Father, this night. For all these blessings we ask again in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. All right. Until next week. Everybody have a great night. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.